National events have recently put a spotlight on law enforcement agencies and their relationships with the communities they serve. Now, with the election season well underway, candidate for sheriff James Flowers has been campaigning throughout Richland County, articulating his plan to improve the sheriff's department's relationship with the community, rebuild trust, change the culture within the department, and to rethink the role of the school resource officer. Candidate Flowers took a break from the campaign trail to talk about his vision for the sheriff department and the changes he would like to make if he is elected sheriff. Flowers, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I can't complain. Glad I can finally get a chance to sit down with you. Before we start, could you tell my viewers a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm James Flowers, and I'm married to a beautiful wife who's an attorney here in Columbia, South Carolina. I have a set of 5-year-old twins, a boy and a girl. They are the light of my life. I love my babies, and they love their dad. I'm a former law enforcement officer working for the South Carolina Department of Probation, Parole, and Pardon Services, and I also worked at the State Law Enforcement Division, which we also call that SLED here. And I'm a member of this community here, Richland County. This is my home. I love it here, and I've been here for 25 years, and I plan on being here the rest of my life.
Okay. Flowers, can you tell us a little bit about what made you decide to enter the sheriff's race?
Well, I'll tell you, when I look back at events over the past few months, past few years in Richland County specifically, I'm concerned about a trend that I have noticed. I've noticed that the law enforcement leadership at the Sheriff's Department has not taken an in-depth look at crime and statistics and criminal actions in South Carolina, in Richland County specifically. And I'm concerned about the fact that they don't have a strategic plan on how to deal with the uniqueness of Richland County. It bothers me that after 20 years as the sheriff, there's no specific plan set in place to deal with the fact that Richland County has a strong urban section, a strong suburban section, and also a strong rural section. And for 20 years, the trend has grown, and I believe that the sheriff and the sheriff's department leadership should have seen this coming, and the fact that they haven't done anything to get ahead of that crime is one of the things that makes me really want to get involved and make sure that the people here in Richland County has the leadership that it needs to move forward.
Okay. Richland County has one of the largest sheriff departments in the state, if not the country. What qualifies you to lead this large body?
Well, my entire career has been spent at the state level. I've worked with the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, which is just as big as the Sheriff's Department here. I've been exposed to the budget process there. I've been exposed to planning, operational planning for events, operational planning for just general law enforcement activities for the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division. I also worked at the Department of Probation, Parole, and Pardon Services, where I was a captain over the Special Operations Response Team, which was a very large team of agents who worked to further the security needs for the state of South Carolina, involving hurricanes, state emergencies, snow duties, bike week, different things like that. So my experience is in depth, involving large numbers of agents, large budgets, the logistics and law enforcement and things like that.
Okay. What are two of the major things that you believe need to be changed in the Sheriff's Department?
I think the culture needs to be changed. I think the first thing that needs to be done is that the leader of the Sheriff's Department, the sheriff, needs to set the tone for how law enforcement officers police our communities. It's important that police officers, law enforcement officers, deputies at the Sheriff's Department focus on protecting people's rights and ensuring that the laws of the state of South Carolina are enforced equally and fairly across the board, regardless of who you are, whether you're black, brown, poor, rich, upper middle class. None of that matters. It's important that the sheriff sets the tone for that. And also, what needs to happen is that department needs to learn to play well with others. It's important that the other agencies, state, local, and federal law enforcement agencies, have a partner with the Sheriff's Department in Richland County. Richland County is the capital county in the state of South Carolina. And for the Sheriff's Department to be isolationist and not to share information and resources and have good relationships with other agencies is a shame. And so I want to build that relationship with all the other agencies as well as the community. Community policing, and I mean true community policing. I'm talking about every deputy that wears the badge out in the community, building alliances and relationships with community people, getting to know the people in the neighborhoods in which they patrol. If you're a deputy and you work a 12-hour shift in a neighborhood and you don't know anybody, then what have you been doing? And so it's important that community policing, true community policing, is a very big part of the Sheriff's Department. And now the Sheriff's Department has a team of deputies who work on community policing, and that's about a 10 or 15 man team, and that's fine, but why is it not everybody? And so that's my main concern with that.
Okay. Wanted to ask you, given the current climate in the country regarding law enforcement and how it deals with certain citizens, particularly African Americans, and I know it's a cliche now, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this. Do Black Lives Matter?
Absolutely. Black Lives Matter, absolutely. And the main concern about that is Black lives have not always mattered. And so in order for someone to say that Black lives don't matter or the Black Lives Matter movement is a problem, doesn't really make sense. You can go back to constitutional history and you'll see that Black lives didn't always matter. You can go back to the 1920s and all the way up to the 1960s and see that Black lives didn't matter. And even today, with the shooting of unarmed Black men in certain situations, you can see that Black lives have not always mattered. So it's important that we focus on the fact that Black lives matter and that Black lives matter too, or also, or as well. So people who just don't like the term Black Lives Matter, add the "to" as well to it, and that should make you feel better about it.
Okay. Well, since we're on this topic, one of the biggest problems with what the Black Lives Matter movement raised up out of these police shootings, where these police shootings were founded as justifiable shooting or justifiable homicide or a good shoot, to use law enforcement terms. Richland County Sheriff's Department is the only law enforcement body in the state that does not turn the investigation over to SLED when there's an officer involved shooting. What are your thoughts on that situation?
I think it's ridiculous. I think that anytime you don't want outside eyes, outside review, transparency of the process, then it looks like you won't have something to hide, or either you actually have something to hide. As sheriff, the first thing I would do is make sure that any officer involved in a shooting, any criminal incident by an officer, or any allegation that could lead to criminal activity by an officer is turned over to the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division and subject to outside review, citizens review. Anytime you can shed the light of transparency on law enforcement actions, you're doing a good thing. You're making people comfortable with law enforcement when they know that you don't have anything to hide and that you want to share what's going on inside and outside of the department with the people in the community. That's when you will get good relationships with the community. So the fact that this sheriff and this sheriff's department does not turn over their shootings, and that they are the only agency in the state of South Carolina, is a travesty. And it tells you a lot about the sheriff, and it tells you a lot about his leadership. The fact that he refuses to do this, and the fact that the state legislature has to attempt to pass a law to require him specifically to do this, shows the fact that he's out of touch and ineffective, and that it's time for his leadership to end.
Okay. Want to take it now to crime control and dealing with crime. There has recently been a rise of violence in Northeast Columbia.
Yes.
What do you attribute that to, and how would you go about quelling some of this crime?
Well, I attribute it to two reasons. The first thing is that Northeast Richland County has been growing steadily for 15 plus years. And it's not like it has been a secret, you know. If you live in Northeast Richland, if you live in Richland County specifically, anywhere, you can see that this level of growth has continued, started 15 to 20 years ago, and has continued. You can't go anywhere and not see a house or a business or a neighborhood being built. So the fact that you are adding more people into an area is going to increase the amount of crime. My problem and my concern with that is that the sheriff has been sheriff for 20 years, and he has obviously not seen or noticed the fact that Richland County, Northeast Richland County, has become what it has become, and he has not put any sort of strategic plan in place to deal with that. So my thoughts are, what we need to do is take the resources that we have at the Sheriff's Department, $30 million budget. A lot of that money is being wasted on things that the Sheriff's Department doesn't need: helicopters, airplanes, tanks, labs, different things like that. I would take that money from those programs and those pieces of equipment, reprogram that into more deputies that are in their cars, in the neighborhoods, fully equipped, fully supported, and fully trained, out in the neighborhood, building relationships and alliances, doing true community policing with the people in Northeast Richland County. If we can take 10, 15, 20 more deputies and put them on the road, focusing on crime prevention, then maybe we can stop some of those crimes. Actually, I know we can. In some of the shootings that have happened, a shooting in the parking lot at a Publix at night, the fact that there are only 5 deputies that patrol that entire region at any given time is a problem. And so if you had 10 or 15 or 20 deputies, more than likely you'd have somebody somewhere close enough to that area to prevent it.
Okay. I want to talk about another high-profile incident, the Spring Valley incident,
Yes.
with the school resource officer and the young lady. It's been a lot of criticism of that program and a lot of praise. What would you change about that program if you were elected sheriff? Well,
the first thing I would change is I would get the SROs, the school resource officers, completely out of school discipline. A school resource officer has no place in school discipline. Now, the purpose of a school resource officer is to protect the students, teachers, and staff from outside agitators. So I don't have a problem with school resource officers being at the school, as long as they are there for what they were originally intended for, and that is to keep the school safe from someone outside of the school attempting to harm someone inside of the school. Now, also, while they're there, if there are crimes that take place in the school, and I mean violent crimes or major crimes, then the law enforcement officer should be called to deal with that. But a student doing things that students do, juvenile behavior, should not be criminalized. And what we're doing when we do that is we are adding to the school to prison pipeline. And that is not going to be a part of my administration. We are not going to arrest middle school students, high school students for juvenile behavior. We're going to take that option off the table. So I recently spoke at the House Judiciary Subcommittee in favor of House Bill 4481, which was a bill that made changes to the disturbing schools law. And one of the changes was that it took the disturbing schools arrest away from law enforcement officers when it involves an actual student. So a student cannot be charged for disturbing schools. If a student commits a crime, then that student can be charged for that crime. So I support that bill. I support the removal of criminal sanctions for juvenile behavior.
Okay. Flowers, before I let you go, Richland County voters go to the poll in June. Is there anything you would like to say to the voters?
I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for all the support, all the love, all of the well wishes that we've received. We've worked very hard in this campaign from the very beginning to get our message out, attending events, programs, churches, neighborhood association meetings, neighborhood canvassing, and we've been well received. And I cannot tell the voters how much I appreciate their response to our campaign, and I promise that as Sheriff of Richland County, I want to make them proud.
Okay. Is there any contact information in case somebody wants to get a yard sign or see how they can become a part of the campaign?
Yes, I have a website which is electflowers.com. That's electflowers.com. I also have an address that they can write to, which is P.O. Box 683, Columbia, South Carolina 29202.
Okay. Flowers, thank you for taking time to sit down with me today.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.